The air recyclers of Outpost Kappa 9 wheezed like a dying animal, struggling against the cocktail of various species exhalations. Talia Nix moved through the crowded market with practiced invisibility, her violet eyes scanning for security drones. The bioluminescent markings along her blue-tinged skin were dimmed to near invisibility, a trick that had kept her alive for 3 standard months since fleeing Cerulean space. "Target still at large," blared the public announcement system. "Reward for information leading to capture of Cerulean dissident specimen 7 Tau 9. Talia smirked. The Cerulean regime couldn't even be bothered to use her name. Just another specimen to be contained. The bounty on her head had tripled overnight. Apparently, stealing state secrets carried a heavier penalty than she'd anticipated. Through the grimy viewport at the station's edge, she spotted it. A mid-size cargo hauler docked at the farthest berth. The ship's registration indicated it wouldn't depart for another 12 hours. Plenty of time to stow away, hack the autopilot, and vanish into the uncharted regions beyond the Cygnus arm. Captain Dax Heller lounged in the pilot's chair of the Lucky Break, boots propped on the console, watching the security feed with amusement. The Cerulean female had been casing his ship for nearly an hour, clearly unaware that his ship's registration data had been deliberately falsified. "Well, now, what do we have here?" he murmured, taking a swig from his thermos. With his shaggy brown hair and perpetually wrinkled flight suit, most people underestimated him. It was a misconception he cultivated carefully. Dax recognized a fugitive when he saw one. Her dimmed bioluminescence was a dead giveaway. Ceruleans only suppressed their natural glow when they were hiding something. He'd heard about the dissident with a massive bounty, but bounty hunting had never been his style. "Might as well prepare for our guest," he said to no one in particular, tapping commands into his wrist computer. Talia slipped through the cargo ship's external hatch, bypassing the rudimentary security system with embarrassing ease. The vessel was older than she'd initially thought, a Terran Hauler 350, at least 20 years outdated, all the better for her purposes. The cargo hold was dimly lit and smelled of engine oil and something else. Coffee. She froze, senses heightened. Someone was aboard, but the docking registry had shown automated systems only. Too late, she noticed the nearly invisible filament stretched across the passageway. As her ankle broke the beam, panels in the walls slid open, and foam erupted from hidden nozzles, quickly hardening around her legs. "Honestly, I'm impressed," came a relaxed male voice from the shadows. "Most people trigger the alarm at the hatch." A human man stepped into view, leaning casually against the bulkhead. He was taller than average for his species, with an easy posture that belied the alertness in his hazel eyes. "The name's Dax Heller. This is my ship, the Lucky Break, and you're currently stuck in industrial-grade restraint foam that'll take about 6 hours to dissolve." He smiled, taking a sip from a battered thermos. "So we've got time to discuss why a Cerulean fugitive wants to steal my ship." Talia's markings flared bright turquoise with anger. "Release me immediately, human." "Not likely," Dax replied, circling her with undisguised curiosity. "Though I have to say, for someone with the 3rd highest bounty in the quadrant, I expected someone taller." "If you're turning me in for the bounty, just get it over with," Talia spat, trying unsuccessfully to free herself from the hardened foam. Dax crouched to meet her eyes. "Now why would I do that when you clearly have skills I could use?" That security bypass was impressive, sloppy but impressive. "Sloppy?" Her markings pulsed indignantly. "If you'd checked the power consumption metrics, you'd have known someone was aboard," he shrugged. "Rookie mistake." Talia glared at him, calculating her options. "What do you want?" "First, I want to know why the Cerulean regime wants you badly enough to offer 5 million credits for your capture." Dax's easy smile remained, but his eyes had hardened. "Then we can discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement that doesn't involve you stealing my ship or me collecting that very tempting bounty." For the first time in months, Talia felt something besides fear, curiosity. This human was different. He'd had every opportunity to alert authorities but hadn't. Yet. "I'm a geneticist," she said finally. "I discovered something they want buried, something about forced evolutionary modifications on my people." Dax nodded slowly. "Interesting, and why my ship specifically?" "It wasn't specific, you were just convenient." He laughed. "Well then, specimen 7 Tau 9, I think this might be the beginning of an interesting partnership." "Don't call me that," she said through gritted teeth. My name is Talia Nix. All right, Talia Nix, Dax said, pressing a button on his wrist computer that began dissolving the restraint foam. Let's negotiate terms, because as it happens, I could use someone with your particular talents. As the foam receded, Talia realized she'd found something unexpected, an opportunity. Whether this human would prove to be an ally or another enemy remained to be seen, but for the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope. The Lucky Breaks galley was cramped but surprisingly clean. Talia sat rigidly on one side of the small table, watching Dax prepare 2 steaming cups of what he called the only decent thing humans ever invented, coffee. So geneticist turned fugitive, Dax said, sliding a mug toward her. That's quite a career change. Talia's markings flickered cautiously as she sniffed the dark liquid. I didn't choose this path. When you discover your government is secretly manipulating your species' DNA to make more compliant citizens, you don't exactly have many options. And they're hunting you because you have proof. Dax's casual tone belied his intense focus. I have more than proof, I have the counteragent. Her violet eyes met his, a way to reverse their modifications. Dax whistled low. No wonder they've put such a price on your head. He took a long sip from his mug. So what was your plan? Hijack my ship and then what? Become a space pirate? Talia's markings flushed a deep purple with embarrassment. I needed to reach the Callisto Science Collective. They have the resources to mass-produce the counteragent. Callisto? Dax raised an eyebrow. That's deep in Earth Alliance territory. You'd never make it past their border patrols with a Cerulean biosignature. Hence the need for a ship and a new identity, she countered. Dax leaned back, studying her with newfound interest. The light caught the faint scar running along his jawline, a souvenir from one of his less successful ventures. Here's the thing, Talia. I'm not just a cargo hauler. Sometimes I transport items that governments and corporations would prefer stayed where they were. You're a thief, she said flatly. I prefer acquisition specialist. His smile was unapologetic. And in 3 days, I'm set to acquire something from Helix Corporation, something they stole from someone else first, so don't look so judgmental. What does this have to do with me? Helix has upgraded their security systems, specifically their biolocks. Dax tapped his finger on the table. They're using Cerulean genetic algorithms, your people's specialty. I need someone who can crack them. Understanding dawned on Talia's face. And you think I can? I know you can. Your genetic background combined with your scientific expertise makes you uniquely qualified. Dax leaned forward. Help me with this job, and afterward I'll take you to Callisto myself. Talia's markings pulsed skeptically. Why would you do that? The bounty on my head would set you up for life. Because Helix's vaults contain something worth 10 times your bounty. His eyes gleamed. Besides, I've never been fond of governments telling people what they can and can't do with their own DNA. Your cause interests me. You mean the potential profit interests you? She corrected. Dax shrugged. Can it be both? Look, you need transport and protection. I need your skills, temporary alliance of convenience. Talia considered her options. This human was clearly dangerous in his own right, intelligent, resourceful, and unpredictable. But he was offering her first real chance to move forward with her mission. If I agree, we're partners, she said firmly. Not captain and stowaway. I want equal say in how the operation proceeds. Ambitious for someone caught in a foam trap an hour ago, Dax remarked with a smirk. But fine, partners it is for this job. He extended his hand, a human custom she recognized but had never participated in. After a moment's hesitation, Talia reached across the table and grasped it. His skin was surprisingly warm against her cooler touch. Partners, she agreed, ignoring the unexpected flutter in her chest when his fingers wrapped around hers. Dax's smile widened. You should know I have 3 rules on my ship. 1, don't touch the coffee maker. 2, no heroics during jobs. And 3, no secrets between partners. That last one seems hypocritical for a smuggler, Talia observed. Not between us, he clarified. Whatever's out there can be on a need-to-know basis, but in here we're honest with each other. Trust me, it's the only way this works. As if to prove his point, Dax pulled up a holographic display of the Helix facility. Full disclosure, I've tried to breach this place twice before, failed both times. Talia's markings glowed with surprise. You're admitting failure. I'm being tactical. We need to understand exactly what we're up against. He expanded the hologram, revealing a complex security system. This is what nearly got me captured last time. For the next hour, they dissected the Helix security protocols. To Talia's surprise, Dax was methodical and thorough, nothing like the reckless human she had initially judged him to be. His insights were sharp, his knowledge of security systems impressive. As they worked, Talia found herself relaxing incrementally. Her bioluminescent patterns, which had been tightly controlled since her escape, began to flow in their natural rhythms, a sign of decreasing stress that didn't go unnoticed by her new partner. "Your light show is quite something," Dax commented as they finalized their approach. "Is it always so responsive?" Talia felt her markings pulse pink with self-consciousness. "It's tied to our emotional state, a evolutionary trait for communicating with our own kind." "Handy for poker games," he joked. "Remind me never to teach you." As night's cycle approached, Dax showed her to a small passenger cabin. "It's not much, but it's secure. No one looking in from the outside would know you're here." Standing in the doorway, Talia turned to face him. "Why are you really helping me, Dax Heller? You don't strike me as the altruistic type." For a moment, the facade of casual charm slipped, and she glimpsed something deeper in his expression. "Let's just say I understand what it's like when people in power decide to play God with others' lives." Before she could probe further, his easy smile returned. "Get some rest, partner. Tomorrow we start preparations for the heist of your life." As the door slid shut, Talia realized that perhaps she wasn't the only one running from a past. And somehow, that made her trust this unpredictable human just a little bit more. 3 days later, Talia found herself wedged into an impossibly small maintenance shaft in Helix Corporation's R&D sector. Her bioluminescence was dimmed to near darkness, with only a faint outline betraying her position. "Remind me why I'm the one crawling through the vents while you sit comfortably in the security hub," she whispered into her comm. Dax's low chuckle filtered through her earpiece. "Because you're half my size and twice as flexible. Besides, I thought you'd appreciate the symmetry, you trying to sneak onto my ship, now sneaking into Helix's vault." "Your sense of poetic justice needs work," she muttered, inching forward. The past days had been intense. Dax had pushed her through rigorous preparation, running simulations of Helix's security systems while teaching her the finer points of corporate infiltration. To her surprise, he was a patient teacher, demanding but never demeaning. They had developed an unexpected rhythm, her scientific precision complementing his improvisational style. "Approaching the biolock now," Talia reported, reaching the access point to the main laboratory. "Remember, you've got exactly 43 seconds before the system cycles," Dax reminded her. "I can loop the cameras, but if that lock detects tampering for too long, we're finished." Talia's fingers moved with practiced efficiency, attaching her custom decoder to the bioscanner. The device, built from components salvaged from Dax's extensive collection of liberated technology, would project a synthetic version of the authorized genetic signature. "The algorithm is more complex than we anticipated," she said as the decoder struggled to process the lock's requirements. "Can you crack it?" Dax's voice remained steady, but she detected the underlying tension. Talia's markings pulsed with concentration as she mentally recalibrated the approach. "The baseline is Cyrillian, but they've incorporated elements of—" "Yes, Arcturian DNA sequencing. Clever." "Talia, 20 seconds." Her fingers flew across the decoder, implementing a modified version of her original approach. "Almost there." 10 seconds. Security patrol approaching my position." The biolock suddenly flashed green and the laboratory door slid open. "I'm in," Talia reported triumphantly. "That's my girl," Dax responded with audible relief, causing an unexpected warmth to spread through her chest. "Now find the prototype and get out. I may need to relocate soon." The laboratory was state-of-the-art, filled with equipment that made Talia's scientific heart beat faster. Under different circumstances, she might have enjoyed working in such a facility. She moved quickly to the central storage unit, searching for their target, an experimental quantum encryption module that, according to Dax's client, had been stolen from its original inventor. "Found it," she reported, carefully removing a small metallic cube from its cradle. A sudden alarm blared through the facility. "That's not good," Dax muttered. Talia, we've been compromised. Security's responding to a breach in the main server room. But we didn't touch the server room, she said, securing the prototype in her pouch. Exactly, someone else is robbing Helix tonight. She could hear Dax typing furiously. Change of plans. Primary extraction route is now swarming with security. You need to take the service elevator to sublevel 3, then follow the maintenance tunnel to the loading bay. Talia moved swiftly, her body low and graceful as she navigated through the laboratory. What about you? Don't worry about me, just get to the rendezvous point. The connection crackled with interference. If I'm not there in 10 minutes, take the backup transmitter and... The comm went dead. Talia froze momentarily, an unexpected surge of fear gripping her. In just 3 days, she had grown oddly accustomed to Dax's constant presence in her ear, his confident guidance through dangerous situations. Focus, she told herself, continuing toward the service elevator. Her scientific mind calculated the statistical probability of Dax escaping. The man seemed to have contingency plans for his contingency plans. The elevator descended smoothly to sublevel 3. As the doors opened, Talia came face to face with 2 Helix security officers. For a heartbeat, everyone stood motionless in surprise. Then Talia's training kicked in, both the recent lessons from Dax and her earlier life as a fugitive. Her hand shot to her belt, activating the small disruptor Dax had insisted she carry. The security officers reached for their weapons, but the disruptor pulse hit first, temporarily scrambling their neural functions. They collapsed in uncoordinated heaps as Talia leapt over them and sprinted down the corridor. Intruder on sublevel 3. One managed to call into his comm before fully succumbing to the disruptor's effects. Talia ran faster, her markings now glowing bright with adrenaline, all attempts at concealment abandoned in favor of speed. She followed the maintenance tunnel as Dax had instructed, eventually emerging near the loading bay. No sign of him. A service vehicle sat idling nearby, their planned escape vehicle, but without Dax. The loading bay doors began to close, an automated lockdown response to the security breach. Talia made a split-second decision and raced for the vehicle, leaping into the driver's seat. "Come on, Dax," she muttered, scanning the bay entrance. "Where are you?" As the doors reached the halfway point, a figure burst through, rolling beneath them with barely inches to spare. Dax sprang to his feet, sporting a bloody gash across his forehead and a wild grin that sent Talia's heartbeat racing for reasons entirely unrelated to danger. "Miss me?" he called, sprinting toward the vehicle as security forces appeared at the entrance. "Get in," Talia shouted, gunning the engine. Dax vaulted into the passenger seat as laser fire erupted around them. "Drive, straight through the perimeter fence at Section 8, it's weakest there." Talia accelerated hard, the vehicle lurching forward as Dax fired back at their pursuers with a small blaster. The fence loomed ahead, illuminated in the vehicle's headlights. "Hold on," she warned, pushing the throttle to maximum. They crashed through the fence with a metallic screech, the vehicle absorbing most of the impact but still jolting them violently. Talia fought for control as they skidded onto the access road beyond. "That was," Dax started, then laughed breathlessly. "That was incredible, your first heist and you pulled it off like a pro." Despite everything, Talia found herself laughing too, a release of tension she hadn't allowed herself in months. "We're not clear yet." "No," Dax agreed, checking the scanner for pursuit vehicles. "But we will be. The lucky break is waiting just beyond the ridge, autopilot primed for immediate departure." As they raced through the night, corporate security falling behind, Talia glanced at Dax. Blood trickled down his temple, yet he looked utterly alive, eyes bright with exhilaration. "You're hurt," she said, reaching out instinctively, her cool fingers brushing his warm skin. Dax caught her hand, holding it against his cheek for a moment longer than necessary. "Worth it," he said quietly, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her markings pulse with colors she hadn't displayed since adolescence. She quickly withdrew her hand, focusing on the road ahead, but something had shifted between them, a line crossed that couldn't be redrawn. "We make a good team," Dax said finally as the silhouette of his ship appeared on the horizon. Talia's markings glowed softly in agreement. "Yes," she admitted, "we do." The lucky break hurtled through hyperspace. its engines humming with the strain of sustained maximum velocity. In the cargo hold, Talia carefully examined the quantum encryption module they'd stolen from Helix Corporation 3 days earlier. "It's remarkable," she murmured, more to herself than to Dax, who leaned against a storage container watching her work. "The integration of quantum states with biological recognition parameters is years beyond anything publicly available." "Worth the risk, then?" Dax asked, absently touching the healing cut on his forehead, a souvenir from their narrow escape. "Absolutely," Talia's markings pulsed with scientific excitement. "This technology could be adapted to secure the counteragent formula, ensure only those I trust can access it." "Speaking of trust," Dax said, pushing away from the container to join her at the workbench, "we're approaching the handoff point. Client wants to meet in person this time." Talia looked up sharply. "That wasn't part of the plan." "Plans change." Dax's expression remained casual, but something in his tone made her sensors prickle with unease. "It's a contact I've worked with before, pays well, asks few questions." "And after the handoff, Callisto as promised." Talia held his gaze steadily. "Of course," he smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "A deal's a deal, partner." Before she could probe further, the ship's communication system chimed. "Incoming transmission," announced the automated voice. "Origin, Terran Enforcement Division." Dax tensed visibly. "Accept audio only," he commanded, motioning for Talia to remain silent. "Captain Heller," came a smooth female voice. "It's been a while." "Commander Reeves," Dax replied evenly. "To what do I owe the pleasure of enforcement attention? My registry and clearances are current." "Always so defensive, Dax. I'm not calling about regulatory violations. This time." A pause. "I'm calling about our arrangement. The target has been located. We're prepared to offer triple the original fee for immediate delivery." Talia's markings flared bright red with shock and betrayal. She stared at Dax, who deliberately avoided her gaze. "That's generous," he responded carefully. "May I ask what prompted the increase?" "New intelligence regarding the target's value. The Cerulean regime has expressed particular interest. They're saying specimen 7 Tau 9 possesses classified biotechnological information." "I see," Dax's face remained impassive. "And the original agreement, my clean slate. Full pardon for all outstanding warrants in Terran space, as promised. You'll be a free man, Dax. After 5 years on our most wanted list, that's quite the achievement." Talia backed away slowly, her hand moving to the small disruptor at her belt. In 3 quick steps, she could reach the emergency escape pod. Her mind calculated trajectories, survival probabilities. "Send me the coordinates for the transfer," Dax said, still not looking at her. "I'll be there." "Pleasure doing business, Captain." The transmission ended. The silence that followed was deafening. Talia's markings pulsated with colors of rage and hurt. "You're turning me in," she said flatly. "All that talk about partnership, it was just to gain my trust." Dax finally turned to face her. "Talia." "Don't," her voice was ice. "You've been working with enforcement from the beginning. The Helix job was just a way to assess my value. Was anything you told me true?" "Yes," Dax stepped toward her, stopping when she raised the disruptor. "But not in the way you think. Reeves has been hunting me for years. When she contacted me about you, I saw an opportunity." "To sell me out." Talia's markings were nearly blinding in their intensity. "To clear my name," Dax countered. "Do you know what it's like living with a target on your back, never staying in one place, never trusting anyone?" "Actually, I do," she said coldly. Dax had the decency to look ashamed. "Fair point, but there's something you don't know." He moved to the console, pulling up a secure file. "This is what I was accessing when the alarm triggered at Helix. It's about you." Talia approached cautiously, disruptor still trained on him. The screen displayed a classified Cerulean government file, a genetic modification protocol with her designation. "Specimen 7 Tau 9 wasn't selected randomly for genetic research," Dax explained. "You were created for it. The counteragent you developed, they let you discover it. It's not a cure, it's the final stage of their modification program." Talia stared at the data, her scientific mind processing the implications. The genetic markers, the controlled variables, it all pointed to a conclusion she didn't want to accept. "No," she whispered, "that's impossible. I tested it myself." On samples they provided, Dax said gently. In a lab they controlled. Her markings dimmed as the truth sank in. Everything she believed about her mission, her purpose. It had all been manipulated. Why would they do this? She asked, the disruptor lowering slightly. Because a rogue scientist distributing a supposed cure would ensure every Cerulean voluntarily accepted the final modification. Dax's eyes held genuine sympathy. You weren't just a researcher, Talia. You were the delivery system. The disruptor clattered to the floor as Talia braced herself against the console, her world collapsing around her. And now you're delivering me to enforcement, who will hand me to the regime. That was the plan, Dax admitted. Until Helix, until I saw who you really are. He stepped closer, and this time she didn't back away. I'm not turning you in, Talia. I needed Reeves to believe I would to buy us time, but we're not going to the coordinates she sent. Then where are we going? Talia asked, uncertainty replacing anger. First, we're going to make a very convincing show of my ship being destroyed with both of us on it. Dax grinned, some of his usual swagger returning. Then we're going to disappear. Why would you risk everything? Your freedom, your pardon. Dax reached out slowly, his fingers gently tracing the luminescent patterns on her cheek. Because in all my years of running, I've never found someone worth stopping for. Until now. The touch sent shocks of warmth through Talia's system, her markings responding with pulses of deep blue, the cerulean color of trust. I don't know if I can believe you, she whispered, even as she leaned into his hand. Then let me prove it. Dax moved to the navigation system, entering new coordinates. These lead to a research outpost in the Ceres cluster, independent scientists working outside governmental control. They can help you develop a real counteragent. Talia studied the coordinates, then looked back at him. And what do you get out of this? You'll still be a wanted man. I've been that for years, he shrugged. Besides, I get something better than a pardon. His eyes held hers. A partner I actually trust. The space between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Talia found herself moving closer, her scientific detachment warring with emotions she'd long suppressed. The Cerulean regime, Terran enforcement, Helix Corporation, they'll all hunt us, she warned. Let them try, Dax's smile turned mischievous. We make a pretty good team, remember. As if to seal this new covenant between them, Dax leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, Talia rose to meet him, their lips connecting in a kiss that sent her bioluminescence into patterns never before recorded in Cerulean medical literature. It was reckless, unplanned, and possibly doomed. But for the first time since fleeing her homeworld, Talia felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The Ceres research outpost hung suspended in the asteroid belt's shadows, its modular structures deliberately unmarked on official star charts. For 6 weeks, it had been their sanctuary as Talia worked with the independent scientists to analyze her counteragent formula. In the small quarters they'd been assigned, Dax paced restlessly while Talia studied the latest test results on her datapad. The space was barely large enough for both of them, forcing a physical proximity that had evolved from awkward to comfortable to something far more intimate over the weeks. Good news, Talia announced, her markings glowing a satisfied gold. Dr. Voss confirmed my suspicions. The original formula was indeed compromised, but we've isolated the manipulation points. The modified version shows promise in revering the regime's genetic tampering without triggering the secondary changes. Dax paused his packing to lean over her shoulder, his chest pressing against her back as he studied the complex molecular structures on the screen. So it's a real cure this time. It appears so. Talia leaned back against him, allowing herself the simple pleasure of his warmth. We'll need larger trials before mass production, but the preliminary results are encouraging. His arms encircled her waist, his lips finding the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder, a discovery from their increasingly passionate explorations of each other. I never doubted you for a second. Talia's markings rippled with pleasure at his touch. The first time they'd made love, 3 weeks earlier, her bioluminescence had been so intense it had shorted out the room's electrical systems. Since then, she'd gained marginally better control, though Dax delighted in deliberately causing flares of light at inopportune moments. Liar, she said fondly, turning in his arms to face him. You doubted everything about me when we met. Professional skepticism, he countered, tracing the patterns on her exposed collarbone. Completely different from personal faith. Their lips met in what was intended to be a brief kiss, but quickly deepened into something more urgent. Dax's hands found the sensitive, luminescent paths along her spine, causing Talia to gasp against his mouth. "We should," she began breathlessly. The station's alarm cut through the moment, its harsh tones signaling imminent danger. They separated instantly, switching to the efficient partnership that had kept them alive thus far. Dax moved to the door panel, checking the security feed while Talia gathered their essential equipment. "Station security is reporting 3 unmarked vessels approaching," Dax reported grimly. "No response to identification requests." "Enforcement or Cerulean?" Talia asked, securing the precious vials of counteragent in her specialized transport case. "Does it matter?" Dax was already retrieving their weapons from the hidden compartment beneath the bed. "Either way, our time here is up." Dr. Voss's voice came through the station-wide communication system. "Attention all researchers, unidentified vessels have breached our outer defense grid. Implement emergency protocols immediately. This is not a drill." With practiced efficiency, they gathered only what couldn't be replaced: the research data, the counteragent samples, and a few personal items acquired during their stay. Everything else was left behind. "The lucky break is docked at Bay 4, Dax said, checking the station schematic on his wrist computer. "If we take the maintenance tunnels, we can avoid the main corridors where security will be congregating." Talia nodded, sealing her environmental suit. Although they had planned for this eventuality, the reality of once again becoming fugitives stabbed at her heart. The past weeks had given her a taste of stability, of what life could be like with Dax under different circumstances. As if reading her thoughts, he paused before opening the door, cupping her face in his hands. "Hey, this isn't the end, it's just a change of scenery." Her markings pulsed with determination and something deeper that had grown between them. "I know, let's go." They moved through the station like shadows, using the maintenance paths known only to long-term residents. A map provided by Dr. Voss, who had become a friend and ally. Twice they had to hide as security teams rushed past, and once they narrowly avoided a patrol of figures in distinctive Terran enforcement armor. "They're working together," Talia whispered as they crouched in a ventilation alcove. "Terran and Cerulean forces." "Politics makes for strange bedfellows," Dax replied grimly, "especially when both want the same thing." When they finally reached docking Bay 4, they found 2 enforcement officers standing guard by the Lucky Break's entrance ramp. "Plan B?" Talia asked, her disruptor ready. Dax shook his head. "Let's try Plan C instead." He reached into his pack and withdrew a small spherical device, another acquisition from Helix Corporation that they hadn't turned over to the client. "Sensory overload grenade," he explained. "Non-lethal but effective. When it goes off, head straight for the ship. Don't wait for me." "That wasn't part of any plan we discussed," Talia objected. "It's the Dax Heller special." He winked, though his eyes remained serious. "Trust me." Before she could protest further, he activated the grenade and rolled it toward the guards. The device released a blinding flash combined with a disorienting sound pattern calibrated to temporarily incapacitate human neural functions. The guards collapsed, clutching their heads in agony. Dax and Talia sprinted for the ship, reaching the ramp just as alarms blared throughout the docking bay. "Sealing the outer doors," Dax shouted as they raced into the cockpit. "Get us ready for immediate departure." Talia's fingers flew across the navigation console, engaging launch sequences while Dax worked to override the station's docking clamps. Through the viewport, they could see more enforcement officers pouring into the bay. "Docking clamps released," Dax announced triumphantly. "Firing thrusters in 3-2. The ship lurched violently as something struck its hull. "Magnetic grapple," Talia reported, checking the external sensors. "They're trying to lock us down." Dax swore colorfully, reverting to emergency protocols. "Initiating countermeasures, hang on." The Lucky Break shuddered as its hull emitted a carefully calibrated electromagnetic pulse, disrupting the grapple's field. With a metallic screech, they broke free, thrusters engaging at maximum power as they shot from the docking bay into open space. "Multiple vessels in pursuit," Talia warned, monitoring the tactical display. 2 Terran enforcement cruisers and 1 Cerulean patrol ship. They really didn't spare any expense, Dax muttered, executing a series of evasive maneuvers, preparing for hyperspace jump. Laser fire streaked past them as the pursuing ships opened fire. Several hits found their mark, causing warning lights to flash across the control panel. "Shields at 60%, Talia reported. "We can't take much more of this." "We won't have to," Dax's hands danced across the controls. "Jump coordinates locked in, brace yourself." Just as the hyperdrive engaged, a final volley struck their engines. The transition to hyperspace was rougher than usual, the ship bucking and trembling as reality distorted around them. "Damage report," Dax asked once they'd stabilized. Talia assessed the systems. "Hyperdrive functioning but strained. We'll need repairs soon. Life support nominal. Communications array damaged." "Could be worse," Dax said with forced lightness. "At least we're alive and free." For now, Talia released her restraints, moving to check the precious cargo they'd risked everything to save. The counteragent samples remained intact in their protective case. When she returned to the cockpit, she found Dax staring out at the swirling blue of hyperspace, his expression uncharacteristically solemn. "We're going to have to go dark," he said without looking at her. "Deeper than I've ever gone before. No contact with anyone for months, maybe years. We'll need to change the ship's registry, our identities, everything." Talia took the co-pilot's seat beside him. "I've been a fugitive before, Dax. I know what it means." "This is different." He finally turned to her, his eyes intense. "Before you were running alone, before you had a clear mission, now." "Now I have you," she finished for him, her markings glowing with the deep indigo that had become unique to him. "And a different mission, one we share." The corner of his mouth lifted in a half-smile. "You say that now, but space gets awfully small when you're sharing it with just one person for months on end." In answer, Talia leaned across the console and kissed him, a gesture that had once been foreign to her Cerulean sensibilities, but now felt as natural as breathing. "I've spent my entire life around people who wanted to use me or control me, being with someone who sees me as an equal. That's worth any sacrifice." Dax's hand came up to cradle the back of her head, deepening the kiss until her markings pulsed bright enough to illuminate the entire cockpit. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, his usual confidence had returned. "Well, when you put it that way," he grinned, pulling her onto his lap in the pilot's chair. "We should probably make the most of our time together." Hours later, as they lay entwined in the captain's quarters, Talia traced idle patterns on Dax's chest. "Where will we go?" she asked. "Once the repairs are complete." "I know a place," he murmured, half asleep but still attentive to her touch. "A system beyond the outer colonies. No official governance, just a loose collective of independent settlements. We could disappear there at least until we figure out our next move." "And the counter-agent, all those Ceruleans still under the regime's control." Dax propped himself up on one elbow, suddenly serious. "We'll find a way, Talia, not immediately and not directly, but we'll make sure your work reaches those who need it." She nodded, believing him despite all logic suggesting otherwise. Somehow, this unpredictable human had become her constant in a universe of variables. "I never expected any of this when I tried to steal your ship," she admitted, her markings glowing with soft amusement. "And I never expected to meet someone worth giving up my freedom for when I caught you." Dax pulled her closer. "Funny how the best plans are the ones that fall apart." As the lucky break carried them deeper into uncharted space, Talia allowed herself to envision a future, uncertain and dangerous, but shared. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The geneticist and the smuggler, united by circumstance and bound by something neither of them had been looking for but both had found. It wasn't a perfectly happy ending, not yet, but it was a perfect beginning.